Hey, I'm going to take you through some tips for the South and Under spring windows this year, and they're all based on this recycled flower, but there are different formats of the window for different stores, so I'm taking you through everything that we're doing across the company, but don't be alarmed if you see something that you don't have supplies for. That's definitely by design. I'm doing this one video pretty quickly, and I'm going to try and get through all the different pieces. You'll know which things apply to you based on what supplies you have in your box. Starting with the backdrop. Again, not all stores have backdrops, but if you do, you'll be receiving this corrugated cardboard. The cardboard roll that you're getting is in the original format that we ordered it in. It was easier to ship just like this, but one thing that we kindly ask for you guys to do before you install it is to rip the 3-foot wide roll down the middle into 1.5 foot wide pieces that have like a nice rough organic tear in the middle. Don't make it perfect. Here's a section that I've already torn in half. So this is, when I'm saying 1.5 foot wide, obviously it varies. Some places it's a little bit more like 20 inches, and some places it's a little bit more like, I don't know, 12 inches or 14 inches. And the thinking is that when you install it on the wall, you're going to overlap it and create a nice effect of organic sort of hills. So you can see how even though the 3-foot wide roll started as 3 feet wide, because of tearing and overlapping, it takes up less space. You want to consider, on average, based on what I shipped out, based on the math of how big your backdrop is, that you want every two to take up roughly 2 feet instead of 3 feet. I'm going to do a few more. So now you can see what the backdrop looks like once it's installed, and I did this very quickly. I'm not sure what's actually included in the camera frame, but if you can see where the edges of the cardboard end, they are a little bit uneven. This side is maybe a little bit more uneven than the other side. And some of that is by design. If you have a window that is self-enclosed and the backdrop butts up against a wall and a wall, you'll want to bring your cardboard up to that wall. If you have a window where you have wall that ends and you can see the store beyond, so when you're outside looking in, it would be nice if in that scenario you do have this organic edge that sort of overlaps beyond the true wall, and then you have that nice shape that separates the window from the rest of the store that you can see beyond. It's a small detail, but rather than just cutting that clean, having that organic raw edge, I think is a nice touch. Now the backdrop, you'll have the organic breaks in between the corrugated cardboard. I can't stress enough how important it is for you to tear the cardboard, and please don't just install it the way that it's sent to you. It's sent that way because it was more efficient to pack and ship, but we do really need you guys to tear it. If you put it on as it is, it's not that special. It kind of, anytime you use a material in its original form, it looks a little bit cheaper and not as elevated as if you change it. Another example is, these are plastic cups. If they were just plastic cups, you would look like a frat party in your window, but because we cut the cups, painted the cups, and layered different colors together, which we heated and melted into the shape of this flower, when you end up with multiples, they don't look like cups anymore. When you end up with a torn paper effect, it feels a little bit more like a cultivated plowed field and not just like cheap corrugated cardboard. So this is the thinking behind the window. I don't always get into that in these videos, but just sort of some rationale to help you understand why it's important to do some of these steps. So all of the stores, regardless of if they have a backdrop, will get a whole bunch of these plastic flowers. These are made using recycled cups and recycled soda and water bottles. It doesn't really matter how you mix and match them together, other than this one really important detail, which is the 3 designs for the different stores and different windows are based on bottle terrariums, cardboard rings, and chicken wire frames. Flowers that are intended to be seen So those would be the flowers that go into the rings or in the bottles. They're going to be made of multiple cups, so they have some nice height. So you have an outer cup that's melted and bent back, and either one or two inner cups that are still upright, and that way, even though you're seeing the flower from the side, you're still getting a sense that it's a flower. These also look pretty head-on, but for efficiency, flowers that go head-on don't have the center cup. So I've divided up sort of flat flowers from tall flowers, or short and large, depending on what the label I used when I was writing it. But the flat or the short ones, they look great like this. They don't look so great like this. So they've been separated like that on purpose. The chicken wire frames get these cups predominantly. If we mix in some of the taller ones too, for variety, that's awesome, that's great. But the chicken wire frames also get a lot more flowers per square foot. So the rationale of thinking is, since you're seeing them this way anyway, we didn't want to waste any of the cups to make them tall, because you're not seeing them this way. And this way you could get more of them because you're spreading them out more instead of stacking them. If you have a chicken wire frame window, you're going to get this all rolled up and empty, but when you receive it, it'll probably be crushed. I'm not sure how good your UPS people are, but it'll probably be thin, and it's important just to lay it flat, and to really get all the crinkles out, you can put it on the floor and step on it, and just sort of flatten everything out. You might have to go over it a few times. If you do have to pull it a little bit to really get it back into shape, please do. And you're going to use this cotton rope, or cotton string, which is also supplied, and you're going to suspend it from the grid. In terms of adding moss, every store is getting a lot of moss, and depending on which design you have in your window, you're going to use it in different ways. There are 3 types of moss and multiple colors of each. The Spanish moss, forest moss, and also reindeer moss. Now the reindeer moss is the most expensive. It's the kind of moss that looks like the trees from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. All 3 types of moss are preserved, real, dried moss. And the best way to work with them so that they don't crumble is to take either a sprayer and spray the moss before you work with it, and like really let it sit for a minute so that it can kind of absorb and get more pliable. Or if you don't have a sprayer, you can also fill a bowl or a bucket with water and just sort of dunk the moss. Don't put it up soaking wet. Again, the weight of it, it's going to start to pull everything down, it's going to start to fall. But as long as it's damp, it'll be a lot easier to work with and it won't crumble as much. Okay, so once you've made sure that your moss is a little bit damp and a little more pliable, I should probably have let mine sort of rest a little bit longer so that the moisture can be absorbed, because you can see it's still kind of crumbly. But you're going to use your moss to fill in on the grid first, and you'll use your flowers after. So the moss, you're really just going to take your fingers and push through the chicken wire hexagons. And you'll want to create organic shapes. Think of it as making consonants on a map. Don't make it into any sort of pattern, just let it feel very natural, and try and keep everything balanced. So if I'm starting to create a mass here, I'm going to want to also create a mass here, and maybe something smaller up here. Think of it as clusters. You're not covering the whole thing. As you're doing this, that if your window can be seen from the back, you want to poke some moss through from that side as well. There is no front or back of the frame itself, so you can treat both sides. You can even install some flowers on the other side too, depending on how highly visible it is in your store. You don't have to overthink it. Just try and keep everything balanced, and try and keep all your moss into bunches, and then all your flowers will go into bunches around the moss. Let me show you what that looks like. All of the flowers have already been pre-wired. You can take the wires and just poke them through the chicken wire. and bend, wrap, tie them off to whatever is easiest. There's no real preferred way as long as the flowers are secured. And again, if you can see the back of the chicken wire from inside this door, you just want to make sure that you cut the extra wire off and make it look as attractive and finished as possible from both sides. Okay, I've only spent maybe 10 minutes on this so far and used, I don't know, like an eighth of the supplies that would be allocated for this size frame. I'm not going to go any further because I think you get the idea. Alright, so if you have received 2-liter soda bottles with a cut opening like this, that means you're doing a terrarium wall. And the most important thing to note when doing this is a pretty easy install. All you're doing is taking the bottles and stapling them over the backdrop, filling them with moss, and then you'll take one flower, pretty much one per bottle. But all of that said, it's relying on the fact that your bottles are placed in a perfect grid on the wall to start. One trick that I wanted to mention that I found was helpful when doing the test is to take a tape measure and measure out how big is your wall, how many bottles do you have. If you have 40 bottles, you could do a 5 by 8 grid. You could also do 4 by 10. Think about what multiply out to the number of bottles you have, and if it's a wider wall, you could do 10 wide by 4 high. You get the idea. And once you know exactly what your grid is going to look like, you can sort of roughly measure where it's going to go. Start in the center and then work out is how I found is easiest. But another trick that I wanted to show you once you've marked things is, say you measure up from the floor and you know that you're going to want a row of bottles coming across right here at 52 inches off the floor. You can take your staple gun and an extra piece of string, staple it to one end, come over to the other. You'll measure up 52 inches from this side and staple it there. And now you know that you're going to put your bottles right along that line. If I know that I'm going to put one in the center, I can also then measure out from the center. You'll be able to figure out what the best way is for the number of bottles that you have in your specific window. I don't want to tell you exactly how to do it, but if you have, let's say, half of them are clear and half of them are green, I like to alternate. Now I'm doing this very quickly, but I want you to take your time. I want you to measure, use whatever tricks you need to use to make sure that you are making an even grid. And then, once you've taken the time to do that well, this is the fun part and it's pretty easy too. You'll take your moss, and here you're going to want to really lean into the hanging nature of it. You can also use sort of leftover crumbles. So if you have a window that has bottles, I would do that one last because you're going to use your moss in all of your windows, and the crumbles that are too small to use anywhere else, you can use to fill in your bottles. If you've received any of the reindeer moss in your supplies, this is a great opportunity to use the reindeer moss because they're smaller little pieces that really pop when they're in the bottles, especially the clear ones. You can really see them well. And because they're smaller, they're a little bit harder to secure in the other window designs. So for the most part, this is really where you want to use your reindeer moss. And this already by itself, I think looks pretty cool. But you have flowers that you can add as well. So this is where you're going to want to use the taller flowers that are made up of multiple cups. Bear in mind your opening is wider than your flowers, so they don't always have to be dead center if you want to put some of the flowers off to one side, leaning off to the other. But if you have a special situation that I'm not necessarily thinking about when I'm recommending that center grid, say you have two panes of glass and there's a divider in the middle, and where you place your mannequins would impact that, you can make adjustments as you see fit. Now, the final design that I'm going to take you guys through involves these rings, which are cut out of, they're actually meant for making concrete pillars and footers. You might see some bits of debris from cutting. As you're installing, please feel free to just go ahead and clean those up. And in order to make the arrangement, I found that you're going to want to assemble the rings on the floor, lay them out the way that you picture them in the window, clip them together, hang them, and then add the moss and flowers. So I'm going to take you through that. If you needed to create a cluster, you can go with something symmetrical like this, and this follows the vertical alignment pattern. You could also do a larger cluster like this, and it follows the horizontal layout. Hi, Griffin. Say hi. Oh, you want to go out? And if you do the horizontal layout, you can also do cluster. Imagine if something like this were off to the lower right corner of the window. And remember, you know, you can build like a perfect pyramid, but you can also do some more organic abstract shapes. So feel free to play around with things like that. To connect the rings, you're going to use binder clips. Once they're on and they're installed the way that I show you, I promise no one will know that they're binder clips in the end, but it is a really fast and efficient way to clip everything together. This way you can sort of clip things together, look at them, unclip them, change them, and then the final step, once they're all put together the way that you like, is to remove the metal portion of the clip, leaving behind just the black piece. So you can see how those clips secure everything pretty well for what they are. And you can put them all on just one side, and you don't have to worry about doing the other. I'm going to use cotton string to connect to the top two rings. Always make sure every cluster of rings is suspended from the ceiling from at least 2 points. If you only connected it from 1 point, not only would you end up with a crooked arrangement, but also potential for it to spin. We don't want that. We want to make sure that it's suspended from 2 points. And when you're putting it on the grid, you can choose if you want it to be towards the back of the window in one plane with all the others, or if you want to put some in the back, some in the front. You could even consider doing something shaped sort of like a mound or a pyramid, and they can sit on the floor. Again, whether that's in front of the mannequins, behind the mannequins. I could certainly imagine seeing some lower arrangements like this in the front, as well as some suspended arrangements hanging behind the mannequins. This arrangement can be suspended this way or this way, but make sure that every arrangement that you're putting in the window follows the same general layout. What I mean to say is, if you put it in the window like this, you see how you end up with horizontally aligned rings. If you put it in the window like this, the rings line up vertically. Don't mix and match. Don't do one piece like this and one piece like this, because the cool thing about the way these rings go together, you end up with a sort of hexagonal design. What that means is you have sort of a honeycomb of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rings around a center ring. So that pattern will continue to repeat no matter how you put them together. That's just the nature of what happens when you put these circle rings together. And if you did it, even if you did a shape like this, for example, and you hang it from the ceiling in this format, you can see you have vertically aligned rings. If you do just a slight adjustment, now that same shape has horizontally aligned rings. And either is fine, but it's just important that you don't hang one like this and one like this, because then you don't get the benefit of that repeating honeycomb pattern across all of your designs. It's just a minor thing that creates a nice consistency across your storefront. Once your rings are up, you're going to go ahead and take your moss and fill in each ring. And then you'll want to take your flowers that have the multiple cups, again to give you that height, take those wires, and go ahead and use the wires wrapped around the moss and the ring to secure everything together. Then the very last thing you'll want to consider doing once all of your cups are wired into place is take a step back and see if you want to add any other of the Spanish moss to fill in. I say you might want to do this last because it does cling on to everything, so if you do this first, you might find yourself getting frustrated that you're pulling it off as you're moving the cups around, but if you just kind of work it on as the final element, it does create a really nice organic layer over your cups and really kind of sells the illusion that these are flowers. Don't forget to take a look at it from both sides if it is visible from inside the store as well. And be sure to go back and add as necessary to the other side if you have to. If you're too afraid to get too artsy, if you take the number of rings that you have sent out and you just do multiple sets of 2 wide, so you've got one here, one here, one here, mannequin in between each one, and make them as tall as you can given the number of rings that you have, that's perfectly fine too. If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to help answer them. You can reach out to Kyle or Sam and they can put you in contact with me. I'm available to help talk you through anything that you are interested in doing or have concerns about. I want to make sure that these windows really shine, and I really appreciate all of your help doing that. Thanks, guys.